Welcome to our shiur on Sefer Daniel. This week, we complete chapter 7 and begin chapter 8. This shiur is dedicated Le'ilu Nishmas Chaim Zishe ben Tzvi Yehuda. In the shiur, we discuss how the structure of the book parallels the life of Daniel, his transformation into a quasi-king. We look at a similar text found in Zechariah and discuss the ebb and flow of prophecy during exile. We also delve into the symbolism of horns, kingship, and Alexander the Great of Macedonia. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, we are recording. So last time we got through most of chapter 7, and I think today we're going to finish that up. But before we do, I wanted to point out something that I had kind of alluded to way back when we started Sefer Daniel, which is that the book sort of parallels the man, meaning the process of change that we see taking place in Sefer Daniel, in the way that it's written, parallels what happens to Daniel. So let me explain what that means by pointing out something that I have seen, but I have not seen anyone else mention it, so you can feel free to take it with as much salt as you would like, which is the following. I believe the book parallels Daniel and the different kings that he interacts with intentionally. By that I mean, so we spoke about last time that chapter 2 and chapter 7 are parallel to each other, right? Daniel has a dream, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream of 4 kingdoms, and he's greatly perturbed, and he needs to have someone else holier than him explain it to him. Daniel in chapter 7 has a vision of 4 animals that also represent these 4 kingdoms. He's also very perturbed by it and also has to have a malach come and explain it to him, right? But there are actually other parallels between Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar. For example, Daniel in the first parak, we have Hashem granting Daniel favor beyond what Daniel never requested. Daniel maybe doesn't even know that Hashem granted him this favor, but he's successful because of Hashem granting him that favor. Nebuchadnezzar gets the same thing. There are many times, we talked about this in the Ezra introductory shiur, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that Nebuchadnezzar is my servant and I'm causing him to be successful, and don't rebel against him or try to fight against Babylon. He's going to win, right? So he's also been chosen to be successful by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, maybe without him knowing, in the same way that Daniel was. We also have in the first parak, Daniel and his friends decide to not eat any of the food from the king, right? So what do they eat instead?
They eat nuts and berries and grass.
Animal food.
Yeah.
Right? Zrayim. They eat seeds. It's not like they got a nice spread of fruit platter in front of them. They eat animal food. And Nebuchadnezzar, in the 4th chapter, when he becomes animal-like, it says that he grazes from the grass of the field and he eats animal food, just like Daniel. Then you move on to Belshazzar. So we mentioned that there are 2 people or maybe 3 people that miscalculated when the exile is supposed to end. Belshazzar miscalculates and has his party. Daniel miscalculates, and we're going to have in chapter 8, he's looking through the books and trying to figure out why the Gullus isn't over yet, right? Just like Belshazzar. Daniel and Belshazzar have the same name. Daniel is Belteshazzar, and then Belshazzar is the same name with a little phonetic difference, right? But they're basically the same person. So what does that mean? Why would we find those parallels between one and the other? Any ideas? So what I will offer you is, we talked about the chiastic structure, that X marks the spot. I think what you're seeing, the place where there's that focal point is the transition between chapter 4 and chapter 5. What happens from chapter 4 into chapter 5 is that Daniel goes from being sort of the unempowered person, with the king being the one in charge who defers to Daniel, to the exact opposite. By the end of chapter 5, Daniel is wearing royal clothing, and the end of chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar has been completely humbled. I think what's happening is that you're essentially turning Daniel into a type of king, right? He can't have the visions that these kings have. God wants the king of Babylon to have a certain vision for whatever reason. Daniel is the rest of the book is Daniel having visions, right? Daniel can't have those visions until he's been elevated to a certain level of whatever.
But those visions themselves are a handicap because he can't understand them.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to get to that probably in chapter 9. Like, why tell anybody something that they not only won't understand, they're not supposed to understand, and then we're going to write it down in a book so that no one else will also understand it, right? That's going to be a very important question that I want to try to tackle. But I think what we're seeing with that chiastic structure is not that it's just there for artistic, let's make this, chapter parallel that chapter. It's there to instruct us that there's a transition going on, that Daniel is not, the guy that he started out in the first parak who has zero power whatsoever. He's the slave of the king, and he's just hoping to make it out alive. By the time you end up at the end of the 5th chapter, or even the beginning of the 6th chapter, he's the most powerful person in the world, essentially, right? Because we said that in the 6th chapter, we said the king has basically given up all of his authority. He's not interested in ruling, and he's planning on putting Daniel as like the surrogate to the king. So Daniel has gone from the very bottom of the totem pole to the very top of the totem pole over the course of this chiastically structured chapters. So that's what I'm trying to illustrate to you, is that the chapters are designed in a way that parallels Daniel's life experience. Does that make sense? Did I get that across clearly?
Yeah.
Okay.
So is the end game going to be like ultimately man has to realize that even the kings are powerless and that make God king and he's in charge, or
we'll have to see. I can't tell you what the end is. That's the whole point of this book. Is that
I'm trying to follow the thematic structure.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
So one other thing I want to point out just in passing is that these visions of like 4 things representing the 4 exiles is not unique to Daniel. In the 2nd parak of Zechariah, we get something similar, where he gets a vision that he can't understand. He has to ask a malach to explain it to him, and it's about these 4 things that represent the 4 exiles. So I'll just read this to you very quickly, just so you see that So Zechariah, for historical context, let's back up a little bit more. Zechariah is another book that no one has any idea what is going on, to the point where Rashi and Ibn Ezra are like, we have no idea what this is.
Next on.
So I'm toying with like Zechariah, Hosea. I don't know how
just try
how
it. Let's just go through the whole thing.
Yeah. But Zechariah has no idea what's going on, right? It's not just like Rashi. It's not the Meforshim don't know. Zechariah has no idea. The whole book is him like asking Malachim, "What did I just see? What is that?" And the Malach is like, "You have no idea what that is?" He's like, "No, I have no idea what that is." And the Malach tells him, and he's like, "Okay, I still have no idea what you're talking about." So if it's unclear what he's describing over here, don't worry, you're in good company. So the 2nd parak says as follows: historical context. Zechariah takes place at the beginning of the 2nd Beis Hamikdash. So this is after Galus Bavel. The Jews have returned, something like the point where the Jews have returned to Eretz Yisrael. Zechariah, Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi are the last 3 Nevi'im. They're the last of the Treyasar. They're the last of the Nevi'im in the section Nevi'im before we get to Ksuvim. And so Zechariah, without further ado. Ve'ases einai ve'arev v'hinei arba'at karnot. I looked up and I saw 4 horns. Ve'omar el hamalach hadover bi, and I said to this malach who's been talking with me, Ma'ila, what are these 4 horns? They're like disembodied horns. We don't even get animals. At least the animals that we saw and we're going to see in the coming parak all have a bunch of horns. Here we just get horns with no animals. Vayomer Eli, and he says to me, Ela hakarnos asher zeru es Yehuda es Yisrael v'Yushalayim. Those are the horns that like cast away Yehuda, Yisrael, and Yerushalayim. V'yareini Adonai arba charashim. So Hashem then showed me a vision of 4 blacksmiths. These guys who were blacksmiths. Vayomer ma'ile ba'im la'asos. And I asked, what are these 4 blacksmiths here to do? Vayomer le'mor ela karnos asher zeru es Yehuda kifi ish lo nasa rosho v'yavo ela lachridosam liados es karnos hagoyim hanosim karen el eretz Yehuda lazaros. So these horns that tossed Yehuda and that no man could raise his head, these men, these 4 blacksmiths have come to throw them into panic, to cut them down and hew down the horns of these nations that raised a horn against the land of Yehuda and tossed it around. So that is the vision that Zechariah sees. one of the things that is clear from the fact that we get these weird visions in Daniel and we get them in these later Nevi'im as well is that prophecy is going away, right? We have like the earlier Nevi'im, Yeshaya, Yechezkel, well, Yechezkel's maybe a little later, but certainly Yeshaya, they see their nevuah in a very clear fashion. They see what it is, they understand what it is, they maybe make a mashal, but they convey their message very clearly.
Would you say that their messages are generally contemporary for them and their times?
Yes.
Right, like Yirmiyahu is like, dudes, get up with the program.
Right. Oh yeah, they're all about like, here's what's going on right now, and here's how you should react to it.
Yeah.
You don't get like these apocalyptic end of times type of stuff until later, and we're going to see some of that today. But as the Jewish people go into exile, prophecy is coming to an end. And if you picture prophecy as kind of like a radio signal that people can tune into, if you're a Navi, so you have the ability to tune into that message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was broadcasting, as the Jewish people go into exile, that message becomes more faint, and the ability to tune into it well also becomes garbled. So what you're getting, what these people are conveying to you in Tanakh is what they're seeing, but they can't really get what they're seeing because it's not there. They're not tuned in very well.
When you go out of range of a
Right.
radio station,
you go out of range, or there's an overlapping, one station to another station, and you don't really know what you're hearing, or you're hearing white noise or whatever it is. That's essentially what they're trying to convey. They're trying to tell you what they see, but what they see is not intelligible the same way the earlier Nevi'im, and certainly you talk about Moshe, and like you go back, the further you go back, the more clear and direct the message is. The closer you get to Galus, the more the message becomes harder to understand and then even harder to convey.
So there was no Navi that got a clear vision of the four kingdoms, right?
There's no Navi that got a vision of the four kingdoms that translated it in a way that is like meaningful for us.
In that case, I mean, the Amoraim, 600, seem to know what but they know, we don't know it from any Navi. So it's all
know what
that the four Galios are. Babel, Paras, Madai, Yavan, and Rome.
Right.
So we don't know that from another. So that an Amora doesn't know that from Naviya.
Right.
At the end of Rome, like 600 years later.
Right.
But when Rome started, the beginning of Rome.
Right. So either there's a Masorah for that interpretation, or it's their own understanding based on historically how it played out.
Right. I think the Tanaim were the first ones that like mention that the four are those four,
as opposed to
anybody else.
So
didn't.
So we'll see. We'll actually see in this coming parak, we get a little bit of who's who. But
before it happens, and because Daniel's only alive at the very.
So Daniel is alive
and the first ends above him.
Right. He's there through the beginning of Paras, but not Yavan.
Right.
So we're going to see.
Let's see what happens.
Okay.
That's why I was asking. Was clear. Okay.
Okay. So we were up to bonus points if you remember. We were up to. I think we were up to 23. Yeah. Okay. So just as a very quick recap, what we've seen so far in this parak only is that we had these four monsters that appeared out of the water, each one kind of more,
nebulous.
Yeah, nebulous than
right.
the one
one's
before
the
it.
lion and one's
the lion, the bear, the leopard with the four heads, and then we get
wings, and
the wings.
Right.
And then we get this creature, this creature that we can't even describe. It has a lot of horns, and then another little horn grows, and it's speaking, terrible things, and it fights with the holy ones. Okay, so that is where we're at. Cain Amar. So this is what the Malach, or the angelic, the heavenly spokesperson who Daniel is asking to interpret all this. This is what he said. Chemsa Riviyasa Malchu Riviyah. So the fourth beast means that there will be four kingdoms upon the earth. Malchu Riviyah to have a ba'ara. There will be four kingdoms on the land. The Tishne min kol Malchavasa. And they will be different from all the other kingdoms. v'teichul kol ara utidushina v'tadkina. And this fourth one, which is going to be different than all the other kingdoms, is going to devour the whole earth. He will tread upon it and crush it. Now, he doesn't give us a name, right? He doesn't say this is Rome or this is Yishmael or whatever. The Karnaya and Asar and these 10 horns, what do they mean? Mina Malchusa. From that kingdom, Asara Malchin Yekumun. There are going to be 10 kings that will arise. So horns represent kings, just like what we saw in Zechariah. Well, actually, horns there represent kingdoms. Biacharon Yekum Achrehen Vuhu Yishne Min Kadmoye. And then we get the 11th horn, and he's going to be different than all the ones that came before. It's also Malchin Yehashbil, and he's going to cast down 3 other kings. And there is no uniformity in the Meforshim or in the scholarship or anywhere else as to who these 10 kings are. These assuming, so what a lot of people assume is that this is referring to Yavan, and that the little horn is Antiochus Epiphanes and Antiochus IV, and then they try to match up who are the other 10 rulers that Antiochus comes afterwards. There's no consensus on that. There's no consensus on like the other opinion, which is that this is Rome, and then there's 10 emperor. Like, I can't give you a clear, straight answer because I don't believe that there is one. Umilin litzad ilah yimalil, and he's going to speak words against the upper ones. Ulekadishe elyon yivalea, and he's going to try to swallow up the holy ones from on high. V'yizbar lahashnaya zimnim v'das, and then he's going to think about changing times and laws. Right? Remember, laws were das is very established, and it's very difficult to change the law, because the law of the land is also the religious law. V'siyahavun bidei ad idon v'idonin upalagidon. And he will be delivered in, he'll lose his power after a time, times, and then half a time. So the changing Zimnim the Das supports those who want to say this is Antiochus because he made certain xeros against Rosh Chodesh and various Jewish laws. He's really the first one that started making decrees against specific religious laws, right? That in the ancient world, there was religious freedom of like.
What was it?
Yeah, you worship whatever you want. I don't care. Maybe I will also ask you to worship what I want you to worship, but I don't care that you also have 4 other idols in your closet. That's irrelevant. But Antiochus was the first one to really come down against that. Now, what this Idan, the Idan and Upalag Idan means, so if it's Antiochus, then it's like 3.5 years. There's Idan would be seen as a year, and then Idanin is another 2 years. Upalag Idan is another half a year. So you have 3.5 years from whatever time. It's not clear.
Time and half a time.
Right. It's intentionally vague, right? If you want to just say it's going to be 3 years, just say 3.5 years, just say that. Or if you want to give a date, give a date. But to use this kind of language is intentionally vague. V'dina yisiv v'shaltanei yehadun yehadon lahashmada ulahovada ad sofa. And then that scene that Daniel saw of like HaKadosh Baruch Hu sitting in judgment, that's what's going to take place. The court's going to sit down, and this kingdom's going to lose all of their ability, and then it will be totally wiped out. Malchusa v'shaltana uruvusa di malchavas techos kol shmaya, and then the kingship and the majesty of the kingdom of Hashem, Yehivas la'am kadish elyon, is going to be given over to the Jewish people, to the holy nation. Malchus malchus alam v'chol shaltanaya lei palchun v'yishtamun, and that kingdom will last forever, and then everyone is going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ad ka sofa di milsa. So that's the end of what I want to write down, says Daniel. Ana Daniel Sagi Rayoni Vahalunoni Vizivoyi Shtanun Alai. And this is again just like Nebuchadnezzar. I, Daniel, I was rocked by this. And his face changes, right? We talked about what that means for the king. And now we're describing Daniel's face like we described the face of the king as it being changed. Umilsa belibi nitres, and I couldn't get it out of my heart, right? Like it's unsettling. What he's seeing is freaking him out. Even after it's explained to him what it means, he can't put himself, out of it. And that carries through into the next parak. And we'll try to get through as much of this as we can. So Bishna Shalosh Lamalchus Bel. Oh, sorry, we're now out of Aramaic. We have completed the Aramaic section, which means I'm going to call on somebody to read the next parak. Who would like to start us off? Okay.
Okay. Bishnas Shalosh Lamalchus Belshazzar Hamelach. So this is all still before parak 5?
So this is still before parak 5, because parak 5 is the end of his third year. That's the end of his reign. So this is the end of the beginning of year 3 of Belshazzar.
Hamelach. Chazon Niralai, a dream came to me, Ani Daniel, Acharei Nira Elai Batchila, after the visions that I saw earlier.
Right, you see it's still on his mind.
Vera'eh b'chazon, when I saw the dream, Ve'erosi Ani b'Shushan, Abira, Asher Elam HaMedina, and I was in the capital of Shushan, in the province of Elam. Ve'ereh b'chazon, and I saw in the chazon, Ani Hayisi al Uval Ulai. It's another place that he was.
Yeah, he was by this river called Ulai, which we don't really know what that is. Ulai means like
Until
maybe,
when?
perhaps,
Perhaps, yeah.
This is all, it's foreshadowing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Shushan Abira doesn't matter when you're in Persia under Belshazzar. It only becomes significant later on.
Very good, it gives a lot of locations.
And
3 different places.
yeah, one other thing I want to point out is that there's a lot. The way this is written recalls Yechezkel. That Yechezkel also he prophesizes outside of Eretz Yisrael, but he's by a body of water. He's by the Nahar Kvar.
V'sainai, and I lifted my eyes, and I saw v'hinei ayel echad omed lifnei ha'uval v'lo karnayim. So he saw one ram standing before the river with its horns. The karnayim gavohos, v'achas gavoa min hashenis, v'gavoa ola b'charon. Had a bunch of horns, one higher than the other, and the highest one coming from the back part of the ram.
Okay, so what do horns represent? Kings or kingdoms, right? So this ram is representing more than one kingdom because it has 2 horns. So this is going to be Paras and Madai, with Paras being the more important one. It came later, right? Madai was the first to rule, and then Paras comes afterwards. Paras is greater than Madai, so the second horn is bigger than the first horn.
Reisias ayel ageach yama b'tzapon v'negba v'chol hachayos al yamdu l'fanav ve'matzim yada v'asar kirtzon v'bil. It's interesting. Leaves out the east.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, but also Persia expanded west into Europe, and then they expanded north and south. They never really went into Asia proper, like the Oriental countries.
Yeah, no, it's significant. So I saw the island was goring south, north, west, north, and south, and no of the other animals could stand up before it, and no of them could be saved from it when it attacked them, I guess. And it just did whatever it wants. It grew and grew.
Mm-hmm. Growing up, I don't know if I got this exactly right, but I was told that the reason why people think that Jews have horns is because there was some painting of Moses, and that they had like rays, right?
Yeah.
Rays,
rays coming out.
right?
Karanor is
Right?
use the word
Karanor. But really, it must be this, because if horns are significant of kingdom
So
I don't know if they
kingship
got that
or
sophisticated.
Malchus.
I think it's
No?
the Moshe
You
thing.
think it's the Moshe
I think it's
thing?
the Moshe thing.
It's
It's just a
another-
mistranslation.
I'm just saying, we control Hollywood, we control Wall Street, we control everything. So we're
okay, so we have to do like one more pasuk, and then I want to address exactly what you said in a very significant way.
carry on.
Okay. Rania Yisi Maven, Nate Sphere Yizimba, in Amarav, Al Pene Kolaretz, Eno Gaya Baretz, but if you're Karen Chazus Baining now. I guess I was like thinking it over, like to try to understand this. Is it a young goat?
Yes.
Yeah,
A
Billy
male
goat.
goat. A male, right? A billy
Sphere's male. Male goat came from the west, across the whole land. It wasn't touching the ground, and then this goat. It also had like a well shown, like a well seen horn between its eyes.
Right.
Prominent horn, I guess.
Right. So there's one interpretation that this is a unicorn. It's flying over the land. It has a one horn, like smack in the middle of its head.
This has to be a unicorn.
Right. This
We
is
already have the polycorn.
this is Alexander the Great.
Oh.
There are coins minted from the times of Alexander the Great, and I will put this up on the WhatsApp group with him with a horn on his head. Can you see that? You want to pass that around? I didn't have a chance to print it out,
Interesting.
but you can Google
That's crazy.
you can Google Alexander the Great
Not
horn.
on his eyes, on the side.
Right on the side.
Oh, let's see.
You
Right.
want to talk about payas?
Yeah.
Yes,
Right?
maybe he was wearing maybe the horn between the eyes is tefillin.
Right. So this is common actually to use like people brought like ram's horns into battle and they like showed off their right that's what the shofar is about.
Yeah.
Right. In the very basic sense, it's that sign of power and might. But the fact that Alexander actually had coins minted in his life with him like intentionally having a horn is pretty crazy. Okay.
Is a goat usually stronger than a ram? Which is
No,
strong.
the
A
ram
I
is
would
stronger.
think, I would think so.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. It's a ram, you would think.
Right.
Okay. And came up to the ram that had the two horns. Asherisi omei lifnei uval, v'yarat selo b'chamas kocha. And I saw it standing there by the river, and it went after it with anger and strength. The Reisiv Magia Eitzel Ha'ayel, V'yismarmar Elav, V'yachas Ha'ayel, V'yashperes Shtei Karnav, V'lo Yakoach Ha'ayel V'amod, V'fonim V'shicheu Arza, V'yimiseyu, V'yah, Natzil Ha'ayel Miyada. We saw it reaching up to the ram. The smarmar is like smarmar.
I'd like to trample it.
It says it fought bitterly with it.
The smarmar trample fought bitterly, and it hit the isle, and it broke its two horns, and the isle didn't have any strength to stand up in front of it, and it threw it down to the ground, and it trampled over it, and it was couldn't be saved.
Right. So this is Greece overpowering Persia.
This is right. It's Tzvi Yehuda, Higdil, Ad Ma'od, Uchatzim on Nishbara Karen Agedola, Atalena Chuzas Arba, Tachtel Arba, Ruchos Hashemayim. It kept growing.
Right.
And its biggest, Karen, its biggest horn broke by itself, and above it, or prominently, four took its place to the four directions, I guess, of the heavens.
Right. So this is Alexander dies at the height of his power, and his kingdom gets split up among the Syrians and the Ptolemaics and the Diadochi. So
Alexander was only like 30 when he died.
32, yeah.
And he was like a massive alcoholic, apparently. Yeah.
Well, they're not sure it was poison, but
yeah, whatever it was.
What, you saying he died from alcohol poisoning?
No, I mean, look, I see people in the ER who die at have end-stage liver disease in their 30s, you know, and they didn't probably have great health care back in ancient Greece. So, just saying it's plausible.
Okay.
What do you do?
Huh?
What do
ER doctor.
ER doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. When Achas meham yatsa keren Achas mitzira, Tidal Yeser al HaNegev, al HaMizrach, al HaSevi. And of those four, I guess, and one of them came out, and one of them grew more than the others.
Small horn.
One of the small ones grew more, and towards the south and the east, and I don't know what Sevi.
Eretz Tzvi.
Deer?
It's the land like the deer, the beautiful land which is Eretz Yisrael.
Okay, there's, oh yeah, I got it. Vakidal atzva shemayim, vatapel artzim and atzavim and akochavim v'tremasim. And it grew towards the host of heavens, and the tapel it caused to fall to the earth from the hosts and the stars.
And then he tramples them. So here you get like sort of the maybe the origins, or at least some of the background of this the Christian idea that there's a battle between Lucifer and the host of heaven, and you know, being cast down. That language comes from here.
Tsar Tzava Higdil, Menu Haram Hatamid Vashulach Mechon Mikdasha, and continued to rise up against the hosts of the heavens, and I guess that caused the end of the. I guess it's a Tamid is referring to the carbon Tamid,
right?
That ended it, and it threw down from the Mechon Mikdasha, the base of Mikdash.
Right. Yeah. So, one thing I want to point out, in all the visions that we had seen up until now, no one talked about the building of the second base of Mikdash. They talked about a malchus of the Jewish people after the four kingdoms are over. Then there's going to be the, Yemos Mashiach. There's going to be a kingdom of the Jewish people, and it's going to last forever and ever. No one talks about the building of the second base of Mikdash at all. This is really the only reference that you're going to get to it is here, where, oh, by the way, sort of in passing, underhandedly, like, oh yeah, there's going to be a Beis HaMikdash like coming up that will be under the times of Antiochus, that's who we're talking about over here, the little horn again, and that he's going to stop the Karban Tamid, which he does, and all of those things are just assuming a Beis HaMikdash, but it doesn't seem to even register in the course of history, right? There's going to be four kingdoms, and then after the four kingdoms, there's going to be a fifth kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no, there's going to be two kingdoms and then a break because the Jewish people get to rebuild their temple for 500 years. That doesn't even register.
It was really is that because it's such a lower level, the second Beis HaMikdash above the first?
Yeah, I mean,
we did know it was going to happen from earlier in the because we knew 70 years and then we're back.
Right.
So it's this section where you would think of it. You're covering that period of time you mentioned it.
Right.
It's really like non-entity. 12? Was it 12?
Yeah.
So
needs another drink after that one.
I need to get used to your morning back and when I'm drinking. I'm feeling self-conscious. Charles?
Yeah. No, I don't drink generally. Thank you. I appreciate the offer, though.
Mitzvah tinasen al tamid shah tishach emes artsa v'asasavas.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you for 1 second. I completely forgot the beginning. I just want to make sure that the learning tonight is dedicated to Ilu Nishmas Chaim Zishe ben Tzvi Yehuda, the father of a good friend of mine. Okay, let's continue.
So, talking again about the end of the Karban Tamid is the Pesha because of a sin that they did.
Right.
And it threw down, I guess, that they weren't on, that they were sheker. That they let sheker, because they threw down the truth in the land.
Yeah, so this is a beautiful image, and I'll in a second. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'll mention what the Kotzker says. But the Vatishlach emes arza v'asasa v'hitzlicha, they throw down truth to the ground, and then they prosper in whatever they've done. So the Kutzker says, how do you get truth to his line is emes me'aretz titzmach. There's another pasuk that says truth will grow from the ground. So he says, how do you get truth to grow from the ground?
You have to throw it down.
Bury your sheker. You bury your sheker. Here you get almost the opposite, that once they threw emes down, then their wickedness was able to prosper. If you get almost the inverse. Chaim.
Okay. Veshma'a echad kadosh medaber v'yomer echad kadosh lamoni medaber ad masaya chazon tamid v'apesha shomein teis v'kodesh v'tzava mirmas. I heard like a holy one speaking, and the holy one spoke to an anonymous John Doe who was speaking. Until when will the vision of the Tamid and the sin that a Shomein is causing, I guess, the desolation, Tates for Kodesh with Sava Mirmas, and the trampling of the
right, like all this bad stuff that this kingdom is doing. How long is this going to go on for?
So what's this conversation between the Kadosh and
so this is Daniel kind of like eavesdropping into a conversation that's happening up in Shamayim. Mm-hmm. That one of the malachim in Shamayim or whatever these kadosh things are is asking somebody else, like, how long is this going to go on for? Do you see what's going on over here? This is terrible. I mean, the oppression that the Jews had under Antiochus was really like next level. So when's it going to be over? So he gets the answer.
Harmony is like a used term. You've seen harmony or funny?
Harmony.
Right.
It's like
a contraction.
Yeah. Yomer Eli on Erev Boker Alpayim U'Shlosh Meos Minas Kodesh. That's the answer you just mentioned. He said to me, until the evening and the morning, 2,300 years from now.
2,300 days.
Oh,
days. Maybe there. It's Erev Boker Alpayim. Alpayim Shlosh Meos. So evening days. And morning 2,300. That was his answer. Evening and morning 2,300. Now it could be
6 years.
It could be 2,300 days. It could be 2,300 evenings, and then another 2,000. You can read this, and we'll see. We're going to get more of these numbers that don't add up. But the Nitzdaq HaKodesh is talking about repairing the Beis HaMikdash.
Very Berosi Ani Daniel Zachazon Avak Shavina Bnei Ome Lenegdi Amari Gevin. And I saw him, and he says, Daniel was looking to understand.
Right, he couldn't make heads or tails out of this. He overheard this conversation, and he's like, I still have no idea what this is.
He saw opposite him a man.
Right, so he sees the appearance of a gever. We're going to see in a minute who the gever is, but this will sort of shed light on any other time where Chazal will take a nameless person and tell you it was a certain malach. You'll see why they pick a specific malach because of who we're going to be introduced to in the next pasuk, and maybe even before you read it, I will point out that until this point in all of Tanakh, there's no
talking to named angels, right?
Right, there's no named angel in all of Tanakh until this point.
Really?
Yeah. You'll get like an interpretation from Chazal where Manoach and his wife meet a malach, and they ask the malach, "What's your name?" And he says, "Why do you ask my name? Because it's Peli, which means like it's wondrous." So the simple shot is, don't ask for my name, and it's too crazy for you to even like know. But Chazal will say that the malach's name was Peli, was wonder, but that's not like mefurish in the pasuk the way we have in the next pasuk where we get to meet.
I heard it said that the malach that Yaakov Avinu fought with some people say that his name was, "Why do you ask my name?"
Right. Right.
You know.
Right. Okay. So
when we were doing the first Navi classes, then we have Samael.
Yes, but he's not mentioned explicitly anywhere in Tanakh. That's all from the Gemara.
It wasn't in our.
No.
But we did Samael, wasn't it?
Yes, we did Samael.
No, but it wasn't.
No.
Well, listed.
Samal, Ashmedai, all the guys that we've got in that book, that whole encyclopedia of Malachim, almost all of them are not found in Tanakh. The only ones you really get in Tanakh are Michael and Gabriel, who we're going to meet right now.
Reshma,
15.
Reshma.
No.
16. What?
16.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. 16.
Reshma kol Adam bein Ulai vayikra v'yomer Gabriel v'vein halaz es hamareh. And I heard a voice of a man between the river, and it called, and it said, Gabriel. So the man was not Gabriel. The man said, Gabriel, explain what's going on in the vision.
Go tell you, Gabriel. Go tell Daniel what is going on.
Yeah, this other person tells Gabriel. Okay.
We'll do one more puzzle.
Yavo, HLMD, Nevati.
Yeah.
Vapula al panav yomer Eli Havein ben Adam Kileis Kate Sachazon. And he came to stand next to me and came, I'm not sure what Nevati.
Fell over. I'm sorry, Nivati is to be afraid.
Okay. I was scared and I fell down and he said to me, understand, Ben Adam, the vision of the.
Whenever they say Ben, they call you Ben, Ben whatever. That's usually a pejorative in Tanakh, right? Like when Ben Amos, finish your prophecy and get out of here. Okay.
So that's when people are speaking. Yechezkel is always referred to as Ben Adam.
Right, but I feel like maybe it is.
It is derogatory in the sense of like the.
You're not on my level.
Right. He's like, look, guy. I guess someone's like, it's almost like you go tell. No, you. Okay, fine. Listen, like you little pisher who doesn't understand anything that is going on over here. Obviously, you just had the most amazing revelation. You got to see the end of time.
Right.
I'm telling you now, it's the Kates.
Right.
But you don't warrant your own name whenever they say Ben whatever. It's it's to highlight the recipient's smallness.
Right.
Like Ben Amos, he's not saying Yeshayahu Hanavi, you're such a great person, but I don't like what you're saying. It's like Ben Amos, get out of here. I don't want to hear it. Yeah, like King Chizkiyahu's like,
Right.
He's like, easy there, pal. Don't get on your high horse. It's like.
Yeah, I hear you. Very good. Okay. So we can stop over here, and then we'll hear more about the visions as they continue in the next several prakim.
Yeah.
Yasher koach. Thank you, everyone, for joining.